and welcome to this edition of Own the Journey, where we have the opportunity to speak with incredible people from around the world. Today, we have a special meeting with Jason Hynson, Executive Director of Victory Mission. Jason, thanks for being with us.
Glad to be here, yeah.
So for those that don't know, tell us just a little bit about Victory Mission, what you do, and then your story of how you landed there.
Wow. So I think what we were kind of talking earlier, just really about the whole complexities of the human experience. And I think if you could say, what does Victory Mission do? We want to give you your level of victory, right? Whatever they're ready to step into. Mm-hmm. And so people coming out of poverty, they need tools, they need skills to move from where they are to where they can be. And that journey is Victory Mission. You know, however that looks, you know, we might meet them on the street, on the corner, flying a sign, and we might engage with them in a relationship through prison or the county jail or whatever circumstance they might be at. Even people just have lost hope. You know, our first woman that graduated just lost hope. Yeah. She was ready to end her life and was in a very dark place in a relationship she felt trapped in. And now she's thriving, getting remarried, you know, has full custody of her kid. Just all these different things that are happening. So we just want to walk with people through their journey. Like everybody that we want to inspire could sit here and tell you their own journey. Yeah. You know? So how I got there is a whole amazing thing. I was thinking about the other day that I've been the second choice at 2 jobs, and this was one of them. Oh, really? They offered the job to this guy. They kind of brought him in to interview. He was a local guy, and he took a better job, I guess. Yeah. But the way I see that, I like to view myself as being appointed. Mm-hmm. I'm a man of faith. I believe that God has a plan for each one of us, and I was appointed there for this time and this season. And man, 8 years later, it's just been amazing. I mean,
you guys are doing amazing work. We're grateful in the community because it really does make an impact. So I know when you first walked in, there were some challenges. It was rough. The culture was probably rough. Financials were rough. So talk us through how you walk into an environment that's broken and rebuild it.
Yeah, well, the second choice thing fits in that because I was the second choice on another job, but I didn't know it. This one I knew and I was walking into it. But that first time I walked in, I got kind of hung up. I thought everybody was on vision, was going to move forward with me. Hey, here's this new job, this new leader. And I stepped into a lot of places and the board wasn't ready for it, some of the staff. So I stepped in and almost got in a trap. And you know, I was like 6 months in and I realized, oh my gosh, I think people want to fire me. You know, but it was half the board, not the other half. And I learned a lot that you got to build camaraderie in order to move people together. It's like, you know, if I put water on a counter and I drag the water, it's going to take time. And I drag little pieces. But if I put all the water in a cup, now I can move together in the same place. And so what we really did at Victory, I learned a lot from that last one. And I learned to bring people together. And really, it was the great game of business. With Jack Stack, I was watching some of that. We had a board member who was a trainer. And she just said, you know, there was no management tool that we were using. And so I just started telling people, look, we don't have any money. We have lots of long-term debt. We're running a line of credit with every vendor in the community. We were being bad business partners. And we had to fix all of that. And once we showed that, I mean, people started quitting. I mean, they were quitting, and we eliminated a whole program that was very costly that didn't have a big impact. Mm-hmm. And we just went back to the roots of what are we trying to do here? We're trying to meet people where they are, and we're trying to walk them through a journey where they're going to learn new things about themselves and the resources in this community. We have a beautiful, amazing community, but it was all segmented and segregated. So if someone else was doing it better, we quit doing it. Yeah. I mean, and we're still doing that to this day. We're moving and adapting and changing because if you're not growing, you're dying, right? If you're not adapting, you're dying. Did you write a book about that?
It seems like I did. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's awesome. And one of the things that I heard you say that I believe in wholeheartedly in business is you got to get people aligned in the same thing about what is the most important, and that creates a culture that is passionate about going in the same direction because there's something bigger than themselves to solve.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think about that with group dynamics. Anytime a team is out of whack or anything like that, you go back to, what are we trying to do here? Yeah. You know, like right now, it's like, we want to win the Super Bowl. Okay, then we got then we all have to work together and stop making it about you. It's not how many catches you get, or basketball is great too. All those sport analogies are great. Now you got to bring that into business. And I think that's what Jack, codifying it like it's the great game of business.
Yes.
This is just a game.
That's right.
Let's put the parameters up. Let's talk about how we win, how we make wins and goals and wins and amazing things. I said win a lot. So just like making it about where we're going and then rally the team around that.
Yeah, I love it. Well, one of the things that you mentioned to me that I didn't know until I was reading up about you guys is that you really turned the place into kind of an entrepreneurial type place. So it's like you can't just rely on donations and
right.
community partners. You've got to do things on your own. Talk to us just a little bit about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so the spirit of Victory had that. Like there was, before I even got there, they started this kitchen, and they had they called it Cook's Kitchen, Cook's Kettle. And they had a business. But even in that, we started to look at like, okay, maybe not food service, but now we have a contract with the city. We recycle all the mattresses that get donated. They get paid to donate in the recycling center. So that money comes right to Victory through the city. And we're putting 2 guys to work with that. Then we have a coffee company called Equip Coffee, where a woman packages that's in our long-term program, same as the men. And we have a nightly program for free shelter, but then once you get a job, we want you to start paying in, learn how to budget, and hey, I got to pay rent someday. So we have some program fees around your nightly or weekly stay on a transitional shelter. So once you're making money, now we're transitioning you to that step out model. Yeah. And so in all of those, we're making money and utilizing some of our resources to this is not a free pass. I mean, when was the last time you got to go to a restaurant and you were like, hey, this is free, right? Yeah. Like they're gonna be like, no, we can't do it. There was an exchange here that you come for the great food and you're gonna pay us money for that great food. Right. And so at some point we need to start teaching that to the individuals coming from poverty, where a lot of times they're expecting things for free. We want to get that exchange back, where we say, hey, we're going to help you, but in exchange for that, we need you to go to this class. We want to get you to this other workshop, but we're going to give you lunch there. But in exchange for that, we want you to show up on time. We want you to be ready to learn. We want, and we're going to help you along your journey, but we're asking something from you. Give and get. Yeah. Yeah. And then that's empowering to them, and it brings dignity, and it inspires them. Yeah, I can do this, and they get those little wins along the way.
I love it, and I think what that does that kind of resonates with me is you're getting rid of that victim mentality.
That's right.
I mean, you're helping them to realize that they're the owner of their destiny. They're responsible for their outcomes, and that they are capable of achieving great things.
I think that's you own your destiny. Where do you want to go?
Yeah. What's important to you? That's amazing. Well, I think it's inspiring to watch you and your team, because I know that there are dark and challenging things that you guys have to deal with in that environment. One, how do you stay positive? How do you fight through that and lead people through those dark days? And 2, when you're meeting someone in those dark times in their lives, how do you get them the hope that they need to fight through?
That's a great question. I think that's where the undergirding, the foundation really of our faith, right? What we like in our mission statement, we say that because Jesus shows us that no life is beyond repair. So in that, I can hold on to that. Even, man, when you feel like you get punched in the gut because one day you're having a great conversation with this person, they're walking forward, they're 6 months in a program, they're now working, they're getting their life back on track, they're going to Good Dads, they're doing these amazing things that we have resources in the community, and then they're just gone. And it's like they walked up and they just punched you right in the gut, and like everything we did, where were all the conversations? Yeah. All the promises, we were gonna do that, but like, don't we see those in our own lives? And like we were talking about kids, and having this, if my kid did that, yeah, it would hurt, but it doesn't change. That's still my kid. Yeah. That's still a person of dignity. That's a person who, man, there was probably something they weren't willing to be honest with in the counseling session and all these different resources that we're going to give them. Maybe they didn't go deep enough. And so there was still that underlying thing that said in their head, who do you think you are? You don't deserve this. you're not good enough. And they let that voice become louder than all the positive voices that they're now hearing and being encouraged in. And that's okay. So maybe they'll come back to us. Maybe there's another program, another resource that somebody they just need that second, inspirational person to walk alongside them to pick them up again.
Yeah.
And that's what we need in our community. It was interesting to me to realize that the biggest thing I think Victory does is we reintroduce social capital to that person. Because now we're validating them, and they're not just somebody coming from prison. It's like, well, I'm in this program. And then I don't think I've met anybody in this community that said, well, I wouldn't help them.
Yeah.
They're like, well, if they're with you, okay.
They're putting forth the effort.
Yep. Then I'm willing. Okay, where could I help? Could I hire them? Could I do this? What could I do to help and step in that place? And that's what's really amazing is that's what Springfield is doing. Mm-hmm. And I think any community in our country would love that. We love the underdog stories, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this whole community and country was built on is, hey, bootstraps, if you're willing to work, then somebody's going to give you a chance. Let's go to work.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite stories?
Oh, man, I could pick a lot. So it's just one that comes to mind is I think about James. He's a Northside kid, and his 17th birthday, he's just a high school kid. And somebody decides that it's a good idea to give him 17 bags of methamphetamine as a present. So what do you do with that? And he knows that's not what I need. I don't need that. I mean, he knows it in his head. He was raised, he had a mom that loved him and cared about him. But in the middle of that circumstance, when you make, you're drinking too much, you're having fun, and now you don't feel good, and somebody says, hey, just use that. It'll help you out. And 10 years later, he's in prison multiple times, wrecked his family life, is absent father, and it goes on this journey. Is that his fault, or was it the gift's fault? Or we look at that and we go, man, it's almost like he didn't have a chance. And I think that's the reality. Mm-hmm. There are circumstances where we feel like, man, I knew better, but peer pressure, this happened, that relationship, they made me feel a certain way, and we stepped into places and we stay too long and we pay too much. And I think James was one of those stories, but now he's been at a job in our community working great. He's a supervisor. If you talk to the plant manager, a friend of mine, and he talks about him all the time. He's a great win to their company. And all we had to do was knock off those negative thoughts. And so he came at his birthday at another time at our shelter and was eating gift. We had lobster that day from a local restaurant in our community that had donated that. He's eating lobster at a homeless shelter from being in prison the day before. Now he's eating lobster at a homeless shelter, and he tells these stories. It's just like, you can't make that stuff up.
Yeah.
You can't make it up. And I mean, he bought his kids the first time he could. He bought them Air Force Ones, whatever shoes they wanted. He overspent. He says that now, but what a dad! That's what dads want to do.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want to get free shoes. They want to buy shoes for their kids for back to school. Yeah. They want to buy the Nikes. They want to buy the Air Force Ones. Right. They want to buy the Jordans. Maybe once, but the second time, hey, you gotta chip in. Yeah. Because now you gotta earn it.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what we're teaching at Victory.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I think what I'm hearing you say is that sometimes in life when we get knocked down, that's a gift that we have that we pay forward to others because it helps us to learn those hard life lessons and overcome those things. And sometimes the reasons for that in life are the experiences that we have that we need to pay forward and help others and make a difference.
100%. I think you couldn't have said it better. Those are the gifts that when life hits you, now what are you going to do? Yeah. Who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
What's your character say about what you do when you get knocked down?
Yeah. Well, let's lean into you just a little bit. Okay. So where you're who you are. Talk to us about the childhood experiences that made you the guy that you are, that can bring the energy and the passion to a program like this when so many people have not been successful.
Yeah, I think about two things. One thing that my grandmother said about me. I have an older brother. He's 9 years older. I think he scored over 30 on an ACT. I did not. I was not that guy. But one thing that my grandmother said is, Jonathan, my older brother, he's going to make it on his brains, and Jason's going to make it on his, his charisma, his talking, whatever. And so maybe I've done that. So that kind of helped shape me on just believing in people. But I remember being in elementary school, there was a girl, first, her name was Emily, and she had cerebral palsy and needed help going from, sometimes she used a chair, she had some braces. But I remember being willing to help her where maybe other students weren't. And then I spent time at a camp serving people with disabilities at the Lake of the Ozarks. And I just, when I think about that story, are you willing to maybe be the friend of the person who is the outcast or isn't the typical? And I think when I step into that time, that taught me a lot about myself. I'm kind of getting emotional right now just thinking about that. That was years ago. Yeah. But I think that been my story. I've been in nonprofit space my whole life, but I think just believing in the potential of the person before you. That, man, if they have the right resources, skills, talents, if they believed in themselves, man, I know they can do it. I know they can do it. Yeah. And just to be a champion of people is really fun.
I love it. And I think what inspires me about that is, you're seeing the human for what they are, but not necessarily what society sees them as. And I think maybe we can all learn a little bit of a lesson there as it relates to the folks we're dealing with. Yeah, that's so good. Talk to us just a little bit about how inside your organization you find the right talent and the right skills for people. The right heart. In business we have challenges with finding people with the right core values, the right drive. In the nonprofit space, you have to find people that have that heart. How do you find those folks?
I honestly think we've grown them. Yeah. With being in the nonprofit space, we can't go hire the people who are already great because the price tag was too high. I'm just going to say this: if somebody in marketing is amazing, right, and I try to go get them to be amazing at our place, they're going to bring their level of amazing, but it might not be our gritty style, right? Yeah. And so what I realize is we have grown people that are coming out of college. We've grown people that are coming out of prison. Mm-hmm. Our kitchen manager right now wants to be a local. He's setting himself up as a local chef that does foraged foods. He goes in and pulls, under a tree somewhere in the woods, he's pulling mushrooms out and he's flipping it in the kitchen with sauces and amazing stuff. And he's doing amazing meals for the Heritage Foundation for the Department of Natural Resources. Wow. He did 4 or 5 of those meals. So what did he need? He needed us to step into that. But he's now an amazing leader. And there's 2 guys in our kitchen that are amazing leaders. And our marketing team is made up of 20-somethings that just have college degrees, and we hired them, because they were willing to work for $20 an hour, and it's but if you're in marketing, you're demanding a much higher salary than that because you've proven yourself. I can't afford you, honestly, on a nonprofit salary. And that's really where I get passionate about the entrepreneurship side, because I want to be, it sounds really egotistical, but I want to be the highest paid nonprofit in Springfield.
That doesn't sound
right. That's one of my goals. That I want people that work there to be the highest paid across all the other nonprofits. To where you're almost saying Jason, I'm concerned about that. I want our board to say that, because I want to say, yeah, but they earned it. Yeah. They were here and they deserve it. Yeah. And we built it together. And look, I can also tell donors that we have our own businesses. So then, somebody asked me that the other day, well, how do your donations come in? I said, listen, we got the admin side covered. We're generating our own gross revenue of over $500,000 a year. Wow. So that means I can cover our admin costs. You don't have to pay my salary. My audacious salary as an executive director, you don't have to pay that donor. Mm-hmm. It can go to the chaplains to the counselor who's in the trenches and having those conversations. And I think people want to hear that, that's cool. I like how you're thinking, Yeah. And I just think those are ways we can be more thrifty, but also just, I want to teach what we're growing in and what we're trying to inspire those people coming out of prison and things. They have ideas, man. They want to run their own business. They want to be, that's the dream of the American person. Man, I want my own business. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we want to inspire. So why shouldn't we have that same attitude as a company?
I love it. Well, I think, in our organization, we teach about how we have to build the organization so that we have safety in the business.
Yep.
So a certain amount of cash reserves, a certain amount of revenue that's guaranteed, so that when the dark days do come, because they always do, there's always going to be a challenge, the recessions or whatever it may be, COVID, it hit a lot of organizations really badly. And one of my favorite days at JMark was when I was able to stand in front of the company and say, we've been planning for this. Nobody's getting fired.
That's right.
We're good. Yeah. And you saw the whole organization just kind of go,
big exhale.
It was a big exhale because everybody didn't know. I mean, everybody's asking questions, and in the absence of facts, people make shit up. That's just what happens.
No, that's exactly real. Yeah, you're like, we assume we were all going to lose our jobs. Well, who told you that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when those things happen, but what I love about what you're doing is you're creating safety in the nonprofit. And I heard a really powerful nonprofit leader speak one time who was thinking the exact same way. He said, if my admin expenses are 60 or 70% of my overhead because I have an amazing team and we're growing and we're achieving the mission and we're helping people, why do they care? Because we're serving more lives, we're making a bigger impact, and I want talent and I want amazing people around me. So I'm not afraid of that or ashamed of that.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest myths, and it's on camera, right, is that we have this idea that, and I've heard it from people all the time, like, you shouldn't have more than 10% overhead. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, where'd that come from? I mean, you can find white papers on that debunk that, Charity Navigator and others are looking at that, but still nonprofits are judged by this. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Why can only 10% come from, if you're worried about that and that's how you're going to judge then great. But come in, at least see how it is, because I've worked at 3 different nonprofits and each of them had a different business structure. Yeah. So because of that, each one of them had a different percentage that you could look at, because when you're doing fee for service at a camp, it's different than, when you're giving away free night shelter at an emergency shelter, right? It's totally different model, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have any money, but when they do, we're going to help get them to pay in that system.
Build a safe life.
Yes. Yeah. And so we got to just stop just making these blanket statements like, well, I looked at your numbers. Okay. Great. Well, why don't you come see the impact? Yeah. And then we can talk. Yeah. And if you don't like my style, then please, by all means, there are amazing, great nonprofits. There's one on every door and you can go give them money. But if you want real life change that equates to money back into our community, because we're paying for homelessness at $42,000 a year per person on the street. We're already paying that. Yeah. And what we're trying to do is say, let's empower that. And then now they're getting a job. We're going to flip it upside down. So now I can give you $42,000 back in taxes every year that you're already paying as a community. We're going to pay that back to you. That's real numbers.
Yeah. Well, and it impacts crime and it impacts, the perception of safety and all the things that go along with that. So.
Yep. And your wait at your local emergency room, when you go in, that's the frequent flyers. Talk to Max Buteau over there at Cox. He will tell you, I sent him an email about this one time and he called me in 5 minutes. He said, let's talk about this because it's a real factor on how they get people in and get I hate to say this, the paying people in, but when you're in crisis, my crisis becomes your crisis. Yes. And so how do we help people, that maybe are just taking advantage of systems? And we just need, and that's subjective. Yeah. And I'm not sitting here saying every homeless person is going to take, is crushing our system, but what if we could help them be the most amazing person that we know is in there? Mm-hmm. And there's counseling and there's all these other resources that we need to get them. And it's so much more complicated. It's not a one-shot fix. And we got to just keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah. I think
I got real passionate about that.
No,
sorry.
I love it. I think what I'm hearing that I had never put together as it relates to your nonprofit or others, but I totally get it inside of our organization. You said that you have a gritty style, but you have to have a gritty style because you're meeting people where they're at and navigating through whatever their journey is going to be. Right. You got to help them along that pathway. When we look for a client, we don't just look for somebody that checks 2 boxes. We look for that culture fit that aligns and has the right attitudes around business. And that's exactly what you guys are doing. You're meeting them and you've got that gritty style. And if you didn't, you wouldn't be successful.
Absolutely. And your client that's not willing to be in the fight with you and do all the right things, you're happy to fire them.
Yeah.
Right? Because, man, you're going to be out there telling how J-Mark didn't come through, but you're not with us.
Yes.
You're not partnered with us for your IT security and cyber and all.
Yeah.
You're just trying, well, hey, we sold it. J-Mark's taking all that.
Yeah.
And you can't work with people like that.
No, it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
All the way through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so shifting gears just a little bit, let's going through the challenges. I'm sure you've been stretched ethically. It's like, how do I deal with navigating through all the things? When have you been in a circumstance where it was like, man, this is what I think I want to do, but this is what I think is right? We all get like, it's like, when I was a young guy, I thought, why would I need an ethics class? I mean, it's just, it's either black or it's white. Well, you get into the business world and sometimes things are gray. Like you really don't understand the whole story or circumstances. What's some of your challenging stories there? Yeah,
I think as a leader, I remember I was probably a year into this job and a friend who I really would love to have hired him, and I did later. So I was like right in that space. He came and I was interactive with him. He said, leaders are bleeders. And I remember that stuck with me because since that time we'd had to shift things. Like I remember when we realized we had to close our thrift store. And you would think, well, a thrift store, those should always make money, but they don't. And I had another community leader who was running his own business. He started to meet with me. We started to talk, and he said, I think your thrift store is a big, it looks good, but it's hollow. He said, you're not making money. You touch those clothes way too much. You pick them up here, you take them to a warehouse, you put them over there, somebody has to sell it. And I started looking at the numbers, and we realized through the great game of business process that we were losing $30,000. So if I went to a donor and said, hey, do you want to run a thrift store? I don't think there's a donor who would say, like, we have to run? What do you mean? Like, you need donations to run a thrift store? Yeah. I mean, it doesn't actually cash flow. And so I remember walking in and our HR director and I walk in and we go for the manager and this other guy sitting there. And I said, hey, we're like, y'all aren't going to have a job. Here's what we want to do. We kind of did the severance package. We're closing it like Monday. The sign is up. We're closing the thrift store. I'd already worked it out with the lease and all those other things. Like, it's very complicated to shut stuff down.
Yes.
And I go in, and the guy that was working there was in our program, and he looks at me and he says, "Thank you." And I thought he was being sarcastic, like, because I'm just nervous, I'm having this thing. I'm kind of walked it through in my head, like, how do you just tell 3 people they don't have a job? Yeah. He said, "Thank you." And I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Absolutely." He said, "I've been trying to tell this manager, no disrespect to her because he was a great employee, but she was limiting him because she kept guilting him to stay there, which he wanted to go back over the road trucking." Mm-hmm. And he had this dream that manager was limiting. And I remember thinking, she was limiting, she was actually stifling the culture we want to create. She was stifling in this person to let him flourish, to let him do the next thing. And now, like 5 years later, after we did that, he's been running a truck the whole time. He finds out he has a daughter and has taken her to like Walt Disney World with this woman that he had a very short relationship with. But he's now an engaged father. He bought the building. He bought the place he was renting. He bought it from the landlord. He's now the landlord for 2 other tenants that he's been like that's what can happen, right? When we fire somebody, like that's the gift.
Let him
yeah. And I'm just thinking through that story right now. And I'm like, we do not know when you get people grit and you teach them like the stick-to-itiveness, and when you show them endurance and you show them, like your last guy, resilience, right? Or a couple of times ago, like that resilience piece, it's amazing to see what they can do when they know who they are, right? Their identity projects their destiny. It starts, they walked that out.
Yeah, I love it. So how has that, those challenges, those ethical decisions, how has that shaped your leadership?
Oh, well, it makes me okay to step through the next one, right? Like that little thing. Then we had another ethical thing that with some other things with a staff person, and I can step into those with more ease because I know, look, I'm not responsible for their journey, their choices. I remember somebody early on, a business leader was coaching me on that. He said, you're not firing them. They've earned the right to find another job. And usually it's through those conversations, right? That they've earned the right to find another job, but we either through their practice, but obviously with the thrift store it was a little bit different, but the next one I did, it was more of their choice. They weren't on board, and if you're not on board, you're actually costing, when you're out back there backbiting leadership and saying, hey, well, it gives me confidence to know, look, they've earned their right to find another job. And it's not about me and it's not about this job. In fact, we don't pay all that great comparatively. We don't have benefits. So honestly, go be a negative cancer somewhere else. That's what I almost want to say. I don't need you in here that bad. And every time we've made the right decision as a team, I don't make that in a vacuum. And usually it filters up and somebody's saying, hey, I don't know about this person. And then we begin to look a little bit more and we get to know more and we get closer to the situation first before we make, we're not flippant in that. Yeah. But once you start to, you uncover what's really going on, then you know what's going on and people reveal themselves. They'll tell you the truth. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things that we've learned over the years, and even when you need the help and you're desperate for help, it's not worth having the cancer inside your organization. It will pull everybody else down and you'll just see this negative draw that happens in the organization. So no matter how bad you need, whatever the thing is to be done, it's not worth it.
Yeah. It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Absolutely. And you see that on teams too, professional teams. Yes. It doesn't matter how great you are.
You catch the ball with one hand.
Yeah. But if you're a jerk and you're disruptive in the locker room, those coaches will be happy. Yeah, let's trade him.
Yeah.
Get him out of here. I agree. Well, I know your family is tremendously important to you. You do a lot to involve your family in different ways. Talk to us just a little bit about how all these things collide, how you represent yourself in the family, and how you use the lessons you're learning to raise better kids.
Yeah, I'll tell you this funny story. My kids one time, I was talking to one of my sons. It's probably happened more than once, and he looked at me and he said, Dad, I'm not going to go do drugs, right? Something like that. It was just he was, because I have this, two people that I'm trying to walk out. And I feel like a lot of the people that I get to know that, yes, are at our shelter, women that are in our long-term program, I get to know them. And I feel like they're my kids. I got 4 boys and 3 girls, and my wife is way more amazing than I am. She stays at home with all of them and inspires them. And I leave and go to work, and sometimes she calls me and it's crazy. Hey, you need to talk to this kid because it's your kid. And I'm like, okay, put him on the phone. And I'm like, well, what'd you do? And they walk it out. And usually it's just them not being the person we know they are, And so I think in so many ways, how we raise kids and how we inspire employees, it's the same thing with, why don't we hold people, on the street corner or coming out of prison? We need to hold them to those same standards. They can do it. Yes. We haven't set the expectations yet. We haven't held them accountable. And I really feel like that's a beautiful thing with what I get to see in my kids and what I get to see with our job. We're just trying to inspire people to be the best them.
Hold them accountable to their best selves.
Yeah. And then, hey, we're going to have a conversation where somebody's going to, one of my kids is going to say, I really want to do this. I really my son wants to be an influencer, and I want to help him do that.
Yeah.
And we had this talk, and I don't know why kids come in and talk to you at 11 o'clock at night when you're ready to go to bed. But man, he just started unloading in the laundry room, and I was like, wow, look at this kid.
Yeah.
And I hear this, and so later my job as a parent is to go back to that conversation. Hey, remember 11 o'clock at night when we had this conversation in the laundry room? Remember that guy.
Yeah.
Because that's the guy that's who you really are when it's not about, don't lose track, don't lose focus, stay there. And I feel like that's what we get as a business leader, as a business owner. You do the same thing with your employees. Yeah. And we're just inspiring people, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're helping them find their best selves and fight for it. And sometimes it is a fight.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love that though, reminding them who they are and what their hearts are, because we all get influenced by things in business and distractions of whatever they are, and sometimes we just need to come back together and focus on the center.
And that's the tough conversations. Tom, remember, you told me you wanted to do this at J-Mark.
Yeah,
and you're like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we
All need that accountability. So good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I would imagine that your parenting experiences and the things that you're going through there just totally work their way into the day-to-day operations, and probably even coaching dads and maybe moms on what it means to be a better parent, be present, be relevant.
Absolutely. It's all integrated. Yeah, we don't. One of your other guests, right? I think you guys were talking about work-life balance. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I wish everybody would walk in and be like, hey, just inspire people here, inspire people there, inspire people everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, there's no work-life balance. I'm totally integrated. Like, when am I on and when am I off? I don't know.
When you're sleeping.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we think about what's next for you, what's next for the Victory Mission, you're looking down the road a little bit. What are you excited about? What's going on?
Well, if we would have had this a month ago, I wouldn't have been able to share this, but we are in the throes of trying to build a 50,000 square foot building that's designed to move people through a pipeline of life change. And we're doing that right now. And so we're, I'm meeting with people, and we got another person said that a business locally that's coming on for $25,000. We had, 3 6-figure gifts that have already been pledged or given. And so those things are happening. We've got the state on board, and we're trying to pull all this thing together. And I've never done anything like this. And it's totally inspiring because, like, if somebody said, what happens at that building? I'm like, people find who they really are. And that's what, it's so like, what do you need that building for? Look, it's 6 buildings in one. It's actually the most well-designed. Nothing could be done like that anywhere else in Springfield. Because we've been there for already 20 years. We just needed a new building. And so we walked through this process with the city 4 years ago. This is like an 8-year plus dream that's now like, oh my gosh, this baby's coming out, like we just got to run that out. And so it's super exciting. We're having awareness events. We're telling the story with anybody who's going to listen. And so thanks for asking about that. It's really, I am so excited about that because I stand on the property where we're going to build this building, which is north of our current property. And I stand there and I just envision it.
Yeah.
Like, this is where this hallway is going to be.
Yeah.
Right. And the second floor, the people are going to walk out and change. Like, I get really inspired about it.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I love it. So how can people get in touch to help?
Yeah, they can, get to victorymission.com.
Yeah.
They can email me, jason@victorymission.com. I'd love to sit down and talk to anybody that's willing to listen. Yeah.
I think it's really cool. So tell me a little bit about how that building's going to work. So you're going to have different phases, I assume, as people are going through the phases in the journey of their life, their maturity.
Yes.
That they're going to have different resources, capabilities, things.
Absolutely. All of that is happening. So we already have that building, but the way the building is designed, because we bought that building 20-something years ago, and it was an old nursing home. The design of the building is actually limiting the space that we could actually have. We're going to increase 30 beds by the design of the building. We're going to have 30 more people that are going to move from the streets or from prison to a hope-filled life.
Yeah.
And so, when you think about that, the way the design of it with architecture is involved, they start to look, architects, they're going to come in and say, okay, this is the space for this group of people. And then we'll have a cafeteria and a food court like a junior college.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to walk in and go, this could be on any college campus. And it's like, yes.
So awesome.
But also it's durable and kind of thinking where people are coming from or off the streets, we're going to have, solid block walls, because we, so that's kind of so it's think hospital, I hate to say it, kind of like a prison, kind of like security and wise, safety. We're putting all these things together, plus a junior college on the second floor where people are walking out life change. So if you move from the first floor to the second floor, then you're taking your life in your hands. You're saying, I'm ready to move up.
Yeah.
And so even by the design of the building, you're moving to a new space that's right next to our new offices. So you're moving in this place where you're like, hey, I'm next, there's people coming in here that are professionals. It's just, you're literally moving up in the world.
Yeah. Well, but the atmosphere can help with that sense of pride. Like
Yep.
I don't have to be in the dirt. I don't have to be in a dirty place.
That's
It
right.
can be clean. It can be professional looking. It can be inspiring. The college campus. It's like,
Yep.
oh, I can be cool.
Yep. And I like, you might walk in and think I don't deserve that. And that's where the counselor can sit down with you and say, help me understand, unpack that with me.
Yeah.
What's that internal dialogue that you're telling yourself that you don't deserve a place like this?
Yeah.
And then that is when the work can begin to see, they begin to uncover who they really are. Because we all have a human potential. Let's uncover that together, I think, is the reality.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yep.
So when you think about your legacy, what you want your kids to remember you to be, when you think about the Victory Mission, the community, what do you want that story to be about? Here's Jason. Here's the guy.
Man, I'm getting really emotional right now because, wow, I don't even think about that stuff. Like, I'll be 45 years old and I feel like I just figured out who I am, right?
Yeah.
And so when you ask me that, like, I think what just popped in my head was I want people to think he loved people well, right? He loved the person in front of him. He loved them well.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's accountability conversations.
Yeah.
But I was in the parking lot the other day and a guy yelled at me, and he was in our program and he got an accident, motorcycle accident. And anyway, he just yelled at me and he's doing a lot better than he was. But I asked him, I said, hey man, you going to come to Thanksgiving with us? Because he came into my family last Thanksgiving after his accident. And I don't say that to like boast, like I got these guys coming to my house, but that's who I want people to see me as. Like, because am I loving him well? But I feel like he feels that because he's yelling at me in the parking lot. And I want him to know that like somebody's championing him. Even in all the circumstances and all the things that are going on that maybe you feel like you're getting a bad rap, but do you feel loved when you're with me and around me and inspired?
That's so good. I have to ask, because that made me think, this is a family mission. Your wife, I mean, she's raising the kids. You said she's doing a great job of inspiring them, but to do everything that you do, it's a family commitment. This is a family job. This isn't just Jason going away and going to work. This is the real deal.
Yes. Yes, 100%. I drug her to lunch with me the other day because, one of the friends of mine who works at a local bank, his wife, he's like, I got to have her hear about what you're doing. And then I said, well, I'll bring Tiffany. And so she got drugged to that, and she was happy to eat it at that restaurant with us. But all those things, it is because we're all making sacrifices to make that happen. And when we moved here 8 years ago, she didn't want to come. She didn't ever say that, but we've been married long enough. I knew, but it is a sacrifice. And my kids, I want them to see that there is potential. So now when they see somebody on the corner, they'll ask me, "Hey, do you know them?" And I said, "Well, I'll just tell you, I don't know every person." And usually the people on the corner, they've got something that works. It's the people that I think that you can't see. Those are the ones we really need to find and bring in. And the ones that are sitting in maybe a church parking lot thinking, I don't even want to go through life anymore. Yeah. Right? When they're out there down and out, and that's when Victory can say, hey, we can do this together. So but it's a family effort for sure.
So good. All right. Well, one of my favorite questions that I get to ask everybody is life's advice. So if you were going to give some advice, or one of your favorite pieces of advice, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it's this quote. It's we need to live in the day, but measure by the decade. So I've only been somewhere for 8 years. I can't even measure the significance of my work yet until I've been there 10 years, right? Because that's legacy, right? So I live for today, I live in the moment, but I have to measure my life by decades.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yep.
Well, congratulations, Jason.
Yeah.
Raise a glass to you. Say congrats to owning your journey.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.